Hey everyone, this is Ashish from Developer Hut and welcome to the next topic of Go for Beginner series, which is function return values. So till now we saw how to create the function and how we can use the parameter inside the function. Now whatever the operation performed by the function, we can take its value as a return value. So the syntax is very simple. So if you want to return the value from the function, you just need to define what is the type of that particular variable that this function will return. Okay. And another thing is we also need to use one keyword, which is return. Okay. So we will use the return keyword and then we will say the return value. Okay. So this is how we can return the value from the function. Now let's create one very simple function which will return the value. Okay, and then we will use it. I will simply just update this so that I can create a similar function. So I will just copy this. So here I will say this is a add function which will take the two numbers and this will return an int value. Okay, and here we will simply say return number 1 plus number 2. Okay, so this is how this function will return the value. And then let's use this function. So I will say fmt dot println and I will here say add and I will pass 1 comma 2. Okay, and if you try to run this program, they should print the addition of these two numbers where we are returning the values actually from this function. So here you can see we got the value from the function. Okay, so this is how we can return the value from the function. So two important things. First is we need to define the type and then we have to use the return keyword. Now there is one more concept in Go where we can return the value in a different way. That is we called as a named return. Okay, so I will just simply rename this and we will use a name return. So in name return, we defined what variable we are returning from this function. So for example, I am returning number 3, which is of type int. Okay, and here we will simply say num3 is equal to, I'll just simply copy this and I will say I'm returning num3. Okay, so this is basically the name return. You can also omit a num3 because we already defined it. Okay, so let's try this. So I will simply say, yeah, so we already returned the function, we renamed this. So let's try to run this. So here you can see we are still getting the values. You can also say something like this. Okay, if you want to do the variable name in the return value, that is also okay. Now whatever the values that we are getting from this function, you can store that value as well. So you can simply say, I will say total colon equal to and the addition of this, and I will simply say here the total value. Okay, so this is how we store the return value of the function. Okay, and then print it and use it accordingly. Now there is very exciting feature which Go provides is Go functions can return multiple values. Yes, you heard right. So Go functions can return multiple values in their return statement. So let's see how we can do that and then we will discuss more about it. So let's create one function. I will say function, let's say my function. Okay, and I will say simply my function. Okay, and this will take, let's say a, which is of type int, and name, which is of type string. Okay, and here what I will say is this will return the addition, which is of type int, and greetings to this particular user, which is of type string. Okay, so here this is, yes, of course it's a name return that we are using. So I will create, we'll say addition is equal to a plus a. Okay, and I will say greeting is equal to hello space plus name. Okay, so you can concatenate the strings like this in Go. Okay, and you can assign it to string variable, and then next is you simply say return. Okay, now let's try to call this function. So I will simply go here and I will say fmt dot println. I will say my function and I will simply pass, let's say I will pass 1 comma, I will say David. Okay, now let's try to run this program and see the result. So here you can see we got the two values. First is the addition of a element, which is 1, right, and the greetings, the updated string hello David, right. Now you can collect these values as well by using the comma separated variables. Similarly, what we saw in for loops range keyword. So you can simply do something like this. Let's call this function again. So I will say function, I will say John instead, and I will say here 2. Okay, and let's say I will collect the addition value in a variable and the greeting value in b variable. Okay, and let's do this and let's try to print this. So fmt dot printf. Okay, or we'll simply say println for now, and I will say a comma b. Okay, and let's try to run this program again. So here you can see, so we got hello John and the addition of this. So this is how you can collect the return values in the variable. Now let's say if you want to omit particular value, let's say I don't want the addition, but this function is returning the addition as well, and if I don't want the greeting, right, so how we can do it? The similar way what we saw earlier. So we simply use the underscore. So let me copy this. I will simply say here I don't want a variable, I will say I don't want this, so I will say underscore, right, and I will say c. Okay, and simply again I will copy this. I will just update the name and parameters arguments that which we are passing. Okay, say 25, and here I will say 9. Okay, and here I don't want the greetings, so I will simply say underscore. Okay, and here I will say 2. Okay, let me print this. So here I will say I want to print C. Okay, and here I want to print D. Okay, now let's try to run this. So here you can see you can also collect only those variables which you want. Okay, so this is how we can return the multiple values from the function, right, and this is how we can collect those and use those accordingly. So I hope you understand how to return the values from the function, what are the named returns, as well as how we can return multiple values from the function. So I also upload the exercise or assignments in the GitHub repository. So after this video, you can do those exercises so that you can understand this concept in better way, right? If you have any questions, you can add your questions in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.